motion
20
earlier?
minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor?
So are we,
Mr. Mayor, how are you?
I'm well, Mr. Chairman.
Are you aware of a possible motion for
Third, 2017. We'll call this meeting to order. And I believe there'll be some introductory comments by staff. Sheree?
Yes, tonight we have two sets of public hearings. We have the final adoption hearing for the city and county amendment cycle 2017, the regular cycle, plus there'll also be some amendments out of cycle, and that'll be the transmittal hearing, and I'll recap that first. I understand just initially that at the county commission meeting that there was some motion made to perhaps reconsider the order of these.
Yes. Mr. Mayor.
Maddox.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to make a motion for a modified agenda that would allow for the county, the joint transmittal to be followed by the county public hearings to be followed by the city business. That would be my motion for the modification of the agenda.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion and a second to modify the agenda to, I believe, after item 6. Or rather, to reorder the agenda so that the county's public hearing precedes the city business.
Yes.
There's a motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
Thank you, Commissioners. What that means is what we're going to need
Motion passes unanimously.
we'll need to do is go back and forth between some of the transmittal items and some of the adoption items for the two different cycles, but I'll clarify that as we go forward and identify what needs to occur. Just a little context, the regular cycle we've gone through over the course of the last few months. You had a transmittal hearing on April 4th, and so we're now at the final public hearing for that set today. And then we also then, as I mentioned, have 3 out-of-cycle amendments. Those have to do with change to the glossary, a map amendment for the Holy Comforter Episcopal School, and then a text amendment to the Wilani Critical Area Plan. What I'll do is go into more details of those as we work through the agenda. For then the out-of-cycle schedule, this is, as I mentioned earlier, a transmittal hearing, which means that an adoption hearing would need to occur, and those are set currently for the city and the county, respectively, on June 28th and July 11th. Before I go into this, what I will do is just give a brief introduction, and then I'll ask if there are any public speakers for each item. The first item, it would be shown on the city as 4.01 and the county as item 13, and particularly is the section item 3 of that, community services. This is a text amendment simply to bring the text in the comp plan which describes community services to make it consistent with the city and the county codes. Staff is recommending approval of this and recommending it be transmitted to the state. So at this point, do we have any speakers on this particular item?
We have no speakers.
Okay. So at this point, this one's ready for a vote from the city and the county.
The city, I'll move the item.
There's a motion and a second to approve on behalf of the city. All in favor? I'm sorry, any comments? Seeing none, excuse me, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously.
Commissioner Lindley moves it on behalf of the county, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Me.
Aye. All those opposed, passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move to what is basically a housekeeping that's needed at the end of each adoption cycle. So I'm going back now to the regular cycle adoption ordinance. It would be shown on the county as agenda item 14, on the city as agenda item 6.01. And, excuse me, well, it's not going to be on the county and cities ones. There's my first mistake going back and forth. But on this particular one, it's only the county, so it won't show up on the city's agenda. But this is county item 14, and so this one needs a vote from the county.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Option 1 has been properly moved by Commissioner Lindley, seconded by Commissioner Dozier. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Oh, excuse me, anybody in opposition? Passes 6-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on then to the county item number 15, and it's on the city's agenda for 7.01, and this is the Leon County Regular Cycle Rezoning Ordinance. This simply implements the rezoning that's necessary to implement the comp plan amendment. Are there any speakers on this one?
Yes, we have two speakers, Cheryl Prescott, who will be followed by Dennis Prescott.
If we could, oh,
If you would please approach the mic that Sherry was using previously, you will have 3 minutes in total to speak. There's a light on your left side that will indicate green, and when it turns yellow, you will have 30 seconds to wind up your remarks. And if you would please give us your name and address at which you reside for the record.
Yes. Cheryl D. Prescott, a residence 4621 East Bella Rose Street, Tallahassee, Florida, 32305, Woodhaven Subdivision. And what I wanted to address tonight is some issues of concern for both of our subdivisions, for the Woodhaven subdivision and for the Ruthenius subdivision. First, I wanted to tell you a little bit about why I'm here, why I just chose to speak. I'm not originally from Tallahassee. I'm originally from Virginia. I moved here, and my husband is from Maine. We originally moved here to Tallahassee because it was a beautiful city that we wanted to live in and raise our families. The development I moved into was a mobile home development area. At that time, it was a beautiful, beautiful mobile home development area, not a trailer park. Yes, I'm classified now as a senior citizen. I'm 72 years old. I'm a college grad. My husband is also a college graduate. I was employed in Tallahassee, Florida for 20 years as a business office manager, and only retired in 2014 due to health issues, having hip replacement and other issues related to that, besides having rheumatoid arthritis. In Tallahassee, living in the area we're living in, we've had 2 foster children. We've raised 2 daughters. We have 4 grandchildren and counting, we hope. We used to take our children and our foster children through beautiful nature walks through this area that's proposed to be rezoned to light industrial, which we can no longer do. Our daughters have moved out of the area, and they do not choose to bring our grandchildren back to visit us because of the effects that we've had on our community, our subdivision, the environmental issues, and anything that might affect our beautiful grandchildren. So we go to visit them. One lives in Tallahassee. We visit her often. One lives in Panama City Beach. I want to address Commissioner Maddox's question from the last hearing as to why move into a mobile home subdivision with ongoing sand mining operation. It was began in 1972, our subdivision. We didn't stop. I moved in 1983. 82 actually, moved in 1982, in a well-developed subdivision with a beautiful area around it. And so the sand mining operation didn't start until 1985. His question was, why would we move into an area that had an ongoing sand mining operation? It wasn't at that time. It was a beautiful place to raise our children. I've lived here for 34 and a half years, only now to have our property so devalued. If we chose to move, as might have been suggested, to another area that would be better for our health environment and that of our children and grandchildren, our property's been so devalued with this sand mining operation that we couldn't get much value out of our property to help us to move.
I'm sorry, you're
And we've chose to live here and raise our families.
Sorry, your 3 minutes have expired. I'm wondering if this is actually for a different item on the agenda, which there's some confusion on the,
Yeah, that's what we understood. We
forms.
understood that it was under item number 7,
I
but
understand.
then we were told that it was item number, we understood it was item number 6, and we were told it was item number 7.
I believe you're actually looking for item, well, I have it as item 8, 17O-18 ordinance. So that one will come up later in the agenda. And
Either way, your comments are.
Okay,
Yes.
if you will at least listen to the comments that I have made, I would appreciate that. And what we're interested in is the effects on our environment, the effects on our ecosystem, and how it affects Lake Munson and the Florida aquifer. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
And Mr. Prescott
We'll
will speak
take
at the
the
right
next-
time.
We'll take the next speaker on this item. We'll go ahead and take the next.
There's two more speakers
That's fine.
on this item, if you want to take them all now.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker then will be Dennis Prescott.
Thank you for taking us out of order. I've been here 40 years. Prior to coming to Florida, I had been city tax administrator for the city of Gardner, Maine, and worked in the Governor Curtis' office, who's now a superdelegate to the Democratic National Party. I've worked at both state governments for the state of Maine and also for the state of Florida. I worked in Department of Education in the Knott Building. Currently have been here 40 years in the same place. I arrived in '77. At that time, the sand mining operation was a part of Woodhaven Subdivision. And in 1985, it was spot zoned, and we became part of the second phase and third phase of Woodhaven Subdivision were parceled off into the third phase being a sand mining operation, the second phase being residential, having designated 2 streets, county streets, and also it had its own sewage. So it's partially developed as residential and has been zoned residential for that period of time since 1972 to the present. And so we have, the site plan was accepted in approximately 2004 by the city. My understanding was that they would accept that site plan and that those put certain covenants on the property that must be abided by. And we all abided by that to the best of our ability. And we expected that that end game to that property would be in 10 to 12 years. And we're now 32 years in the future. And we haven't seen a park in that area where it was supposed to have a park. Trucks need not have gone into that area. That is a designated residential road and still is a designated residential road. But we have trucks that endanger children, families, and everything else. My recommendation was to move the trucks to the designated road that was by the unsafe landfill that has no layer under it, city landfill. And so that was my recommendation, is to move that road to not endanger those children. And also, for the last 32 years, there have been a number of people who have presented their comments. We were there 32 years ago, and we're here now. We shouldn't be here now. The site plan should be honored by the county and the city and should proceed to the natural end of it, and that would be a park, and that would be closed off. You wouldn't have a problem with the trucks. But if it does proceed to be zoned however you want to zone it, I would recommend that you move the road to a designated road where trucks are designed for, and that would be the landfill area, so that they can naturally go down that area. And if you want, as Mr. Gasvini has said, he would double the buffer. That would be great. From Woodhaven, it should be 150 feet, and from the city landfill, it should be another 150 feet, whatever that leaves.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The third and final speaker on this topic is James
One
Egan.
moment, Commissioner.
Just real quick, just clarification of the issue that we're voting on, just for clarification of those speakers so they understand that the vote that's about to be taken is not on the specific issue that they're speaking on. So if you could, someone from staff provide clarification of what this actually is we're voting on right now. We can wait till after the speaker, but just make sure you clarify.
Thank you. Please, sir.
I'm still able to.
Yes, please.
Well, you've already heard most of the complaints, but I live closest to both of these things. And our meeting ended last time with a commissioner saying, I don't know why anybody would go out there and live next to a sand pit. And I was there in '79, long before, and I battled with the original sand pit and went along with it when they said they were going to complete what they were going to do and do that. Okay, the landfill, now that we've tied both these chunks of land into this issue, and they will jump on that piece of land and log it, and nobody's brought up all their violations and the reasons we're here. I mean, the noise, they just added 8 feet of dirt over top of the trash pile behind my house, okay? It's a big, I think it's the old John's building from downtown. It's crushed and in a pile 35 feet high up behind me. Now it has dirt over it. Come see. That you're going to let them dig a hole next to this old landfill. I've been there since the landfill got fenced around it and replanted on top of it. And I know that they went out and tested. It's got water in their illegal hole that they dug, that I got in front of the bulldozer and said, you don't have a permit to take out these woods. So I can see all that coming now that they've tied both these pieces of land together. And I understand the new zoning is that they'll have 60 feet between our property and what they're going to do. That's only to that wall. That's insane when you see the equipment they're going to bring in to dig the sand out. And just what, and the rock crushing operations went on all day yesterday. I thought, well, they must know that they're going to get their permits because they don't have permits for that, and that's made us suffer quite a bit. So you've had most of the issues, and all your planning commission really did recommend that you do not give them these permits, and especially right next to the landfill. And I saw what they did. They dug down 25 feet next to the landfill, within distance less than that wall, and almost right up under the city's fence. And now you're going to permit them to continue with that. And that'll be, the neighborhood will then be surrounded. And that's just really not the way to do things. I think you'll regret it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cherie, you want to clarify? Thank you, Commissioners, for obliging those comments out of order. Cherie, would you just describe for the public's information what we're voting on next?
Yes, I will clarify what we're voting on right now. Based on the agendas that are out, just so that everyone knows, the numbers of the items haven't changed, but the order that we're taking them up has. So for the ones that are in the back that were posted, what will be voted on right now is item 6.01, which is the county public hearing for the rezoning. We just had speakers on is shown as item 7.01 on the agendas that were in the back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, since this is a county item, I'll ask the clerk, are there any speakers on the county item 6.01?
No, sir.
Okay, is there?
The item, Mr. Chair.
And properly moved by Commissioner Dozier, staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Jackson. Is there any other final comment from the commissioners on this? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you. Cherie, does that take care of the county business?
Yes, Commissioner, it does.
Mr. Mayor, commissioners,
Move to adjourn.
y'all have a wonderful evening. There's a motion to adjourn by the vice chairman, seconded by Commissioner Proctor. Seeing no objection, the county stands adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cherie, next item?
The next item that we'll be taking up then is we're going to go back to the Section 3, the transmittal hearing out of cycle amendments. That is, as shown on the printed agendas that were in the public, in the back for the public. We are moving to item 3.01. That is the Holy Comforter Episcopal School, a map amendment. Just a moment while I will,
That's the Phyllis Dairy.
I'll let it clear just a minute, and then we'll move on.
I'd like to make a motion for Commissioner Miller to sit with us.
This way I can glare at you if I don't like what you say.
We love
Okay.
you from afar.
So this is a map amendment to go from planned development to suburban for the area that is shaded. The recommendation for this from staff is for approval to change it from planned development to suburban, and then approval to move forward with the implementing zonings, which would of course come back later during the adoption period. And at this point, this is ripe for a vote on transmittal to the state.
Thank you.
Transmittal.
Are there any speakers?
Are there any speakers on this particular one? Yes.
There is one speaker if there are questions, and that's Reggie Boudier.
Great. Commissioners, any questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion?
Second.
And a second to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Item 3.02.
3.02, as shown in the back on the agenda, is the Welaunee Critical Area Plan. This is a text amendment. Largely, the intention of this, oh, I'm sorry.
4.02.
401.
There was a modification, so for,
they've been changed, Commissioners. I'm sorry. I'm working off the new agenda. Does anyone else have this?
yes, I can give you
We're
some.
going to get everybody copies of this revised agenda as a result of the vote that took place originally. It's been reordered to 3.02.
This will be
Okay.
consistent.
Just so you know, there's two other speakers on the item. So
I blame Ben Pingree for the
the
confusion.
last one, it'll read if there are questions.
All right, so it's not revised on board docs. So could you reference the original number whenever you go into?
What happened was this afternoon, there was a modification, so it changed what was in board docs. It changed the numbers if it weren't confusing already. So that's what's happened. So the paper version is what's what the public was provided out, and so that would be what their numbers were based off of. So in your,
Out of curiosity, in board docs,
in board docs online, it would say 4.02, but what the printed versions in the back of the rooms say was 3.02. And so that's what I'm defaulting to, since that's where the comments would be numbered. So regardless of the number, the Welaunee Critical Area Plan is the name of this one. And do we have speakers on that one?
We have two speakers and a third who will speak if there are questions.
Okay.
Can we have the speakers, please?
The first speaker will be Ann Bidlingmeyer, and the second speaker will be Stephen Martin. Please give your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Ann Bidlingmeyer, 1920 Harriet Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. 10 years ago, I was on the original board of citizen directors for Welaunee Plantation, and we worked very hard for 2 years to try to come up with a plan for Welaunee. And what I see going on out there now is not what we had determined. Of course, it doesn't have to be, because it changed hands and the developer sold out. But I am getting lots of phone calls. The most recent one, when I was leaving my house this evening, from a woman who lives in North Carolina, and she drove by the Fleischman Road area on her way to North Carolina, and she said, "Why is this happening?" And I said, "I don't know. I guess the developer wants it to happen." And my question is there a sufficient level of review for projects such as this? I'm not seeing a level of review comparable to what was happening early on after the Tree and Landscape Ordinance got passed. And I'm wondering if there is pressure on planning staff. I know it's a hard job, and there are lots of smart people in the planning department, but I wonder if there's pressure for them to approve things without a level of review. And as an example, I was chairman of the Canopy Road Citizens Committee when Blairstone Road was being proposed, and you all remember, all the hullabaloo about Blairstone and the signs and all that stuff. Well, the Canopy Roads Committee sent the Blairstone proposal back 4 times to Public Works, and we finally came up with a plan for Blairstone Road that people can live with, and they respect it and they like it. I would like to see the same thing happen with developments such as Wulani and other areas around the town. If we're going to other cities to look at how they're doing things, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do things less than perfectly here in Tallahassee. And I think we have to rethink what our goals are in seeing future development of Tallahassee. So I'm just here to just communicate that, what I'm hearing, and see if we can't do some better level of review for developments such as this, because it's not something that we can be very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Next speaker?
Next speaker is Stephen Martin.
Stephen Martin, 2625 Stonegate Drive. Yeah, I've had quite a bit to say about this over the years. I could go on for hours and hours. I don't know where to start with this. I put documents in there that they've got that had to do with the history, and I spoke about this before, about the owners of the plantation at the outset of this, saying that they were going to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, that they were going to go through a DRI review process. Well, they haven't been consistent with the comp plan. And I told you about the DRI application was denied by Department of Community Affairs, and then they stopped. They didn't go any further with it. They got it turned into a PUD, I think with the help of the planning department. Now, I had other stuff I was going to talk about the history, but I got 3 minutes. Based on what I heard tonight, Woodhaven, ironically, this is the same developer that owns Sandco. We were here before this development came in. Where we live is quite a bit different than what's going on Wulani. The intensity of that development can't be found anywhere else out there. The heights of buildings that they're going to be allowed. They've got buildings right now that are being built. And a friend and I went up there, and I'm going to make reference to him in a couple of minutes, or a couple of seconds here. And we thought that what we saw were 3 frames. One was a carport in between 2 houses. No, they're all 3 houses. He got out with his feet, and he's not Bigfoot. 11-foot lengths were between these frames. 11-foot lengths between different frames. That's not what it's like out there otherwise. So this is going to change the character of the area. Now, at the planning agency meeting earlier this month, for which they provided you public comments, all they provided you was documents that we turned in. There were 3 public speakers. They didn't put any of their statements there. Every one of those speakers pointed out how they have not been kept up with this. One person who's been there for 35 years said he didn't know anything about this till this past fall. So they didn't include the public speaker comments at that, even though it says citizens' comments, which gets back to the planning department. I think going out of its way, knowing the tricks of the trade to appeal to developers, keep the public out of it. Last city commission meeting brought up at all these cases where these developments come in here, and at the last minute all these people show up. I think that's by design, sir. I think that's intent. I heard before about employee pressure. We know there was somebody fired not that long ago from growth management for questioning Chasin Woods development that was approved, but he had questions about. So yeah, I bet the employees here have quite a bit of pressure. This planning department's on a mission to fill in this urban service area that's been expanded out way beyond where anything's urbanized, and fill in every square inch of it, and it's gonna look like South Florida. Like the last speaker said, we're going in the wrong direction. Too much push for growth and development, and all this talk about having to make the permitting process easier. You were asking a lot of us.
Your
to
time has
trust
expired.
Without asking these people. I couldn't even talk about the comp plan amendments that they want to do away with having to go through. 3 minutes is not enough.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Your Honor, Gary Hunter is available for questions.
Any questions, Commissioners? All right, seeing none, Cherie, we need a motion.
Yes, a motion on this one to...
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, we're now on to 2017 cycle transmittal.
Could I?
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Madam.
I feel compelled to say one thing about the points that were just brought up. Having sat on that original 2002 committee and then watched this evolve all the way, and then sat on the Planning Commission during the repeated introductions of the 163 agreement, I can't agree that this hasn't been open to public comment. And it has definitely changed over the years, but when the PUD was approved, it was approved with this density, and that was also public. So, and I honestly, Mr. Martin, we have become great friends because he has come to visit us every time, so he knows that there have been opportunities for public comment.
At this point, we are on item 4, as it's shown on the agenda that is in the public. For those commissioners working off of your board docs, it would be 5.01. This is the reconsideration of Willis Dairy, which was originally included in the regular cycle, 2017, to move from residential preservation to suburban. Just to set the context, April 4th, there was a vote to deny that at the Transmittal hearing. And then on May 10th at the regular meeting, there was direction to bring this item back today for a vote on reconsideration.
Just to make clear on this, last commission meeting, we voted to place it on this agenda for reconsideration. The first vote that is appropriate is whether or not to reconsider. And then subsequently, if there is a positive vote in favor of reconsideration, then we'd get to the merits of approving or denying the application.
Right. So, Commissioners, we are at the point of vote to reconsider this item. If, again, the vote is to reconsider, as the city attorney just said, we'll be able to discuss it on its merits and determine whether or not we want to change our recommendation from its previous status.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move reconsideration of the item.
I believe, yes. Okay, yes, you can do that. Is there a second? I'll pass the gavel to second the motion. You want to finish the vote?
Oh, sure. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Wait. We're moving to reconsider it.
To reconsider, which will be followed by discussion.
And that was based on our meeting, the commission meeting, when we voted to put it on the agenda.
Correct.
Which I guess we have the right to do. I had a problem with the process of voting to reconsider it at the commission meeting. So just being clear about that.
So your vote was in favor of the motion to reconsider?
To reconsider, yes, for discussion, but we're going to have some discussion.
We are. So the vote would be 3-2 in favor of reconsideration.
Yes, Commissioner, all we're voting on now is procedurally to put ourselves in a posture to reconsider.
Correct.
When we voted at the previous city commission meeting, all we did was vote to put the item on this agenda. So this is singularly on whether or not we as a body want to reconsider, yes or no. If the answer is no, then that's the end of it. If the answer is yes, then you will move into discussion of whether to approve or deny or modify or whatever.
Correct. So Commissioner Miller, let's just do the vote again. All in favor of the motion to reconsider, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Passes 3-2. Correct?
Okay.
Yes, now we're on to reconsideration.
So if it's reconsidered, these are just generically the options at this point. So at this point, there's discussion of whether to transmit it or not.
Well, for my part, I can't transmit it with the current zoning change. So we need to have a discussion about that.
Should somebody make a motion as to what they wish to do, and then we'll test the motion.
So, Commissioner,
I'll make
to
a
your
motion.
question around the
Commissioners,
I'll make a motion. And I don't know if this satisfies it all. By the way, where do we take speakers at any time, or does that?
Okay. Yes, we do have speakers on this item.
So why don't we hear from the speakers first?
That'd be appropriate.
Is that?
Yeah, no, I was trying to figure out whether or not, so this item now on the agenda just becomes 4.02, 4.0 or 5.01 reconsidered.
I want to cry
'Cause
foul
the-
about this numbering thing. I mean, it's really confusing.
Yes, it is.
Sorry about that.
And that for there's one in the ones that were printed for the audience it's 4.01.
I think what confused me, and City Attorney, I'm happy to take speakers on this, but the only question that was here today was whether or not to reconsider, which means there isn't an item for folks to speak to, I guess, unless,
There is discussion of whether to transmit it or not.
got it. So it's back on its original placement?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have 10 speakers.
Okay, you want to start?
First speaker will be Faye Smith, followed by Frank Willis.
Good afternoon. I'm Faye Smith. I live at 1550 Goodwood Drive. I live right next door to the Willis Dairy. And my concerns with it, living there, I've moved into the neighborhood in 2004, and one of the things I really enjoyed about the neighborhood was it was a quiet neighborhood without much traffic because of the way in which it was built. Since the activity's been going on next door with the parties, when I go down to sit down sometimes on the weekend to watch TV, I can't hardly hear my TV over the noise next door. It's also greatly increased the amount of traffic through our neighborhood, which we on a single road, there's not even enough room to put lines in the road, and people's been parking side of the road. I find beer bottles in my ditch. I did not know it at the previous meeting that because these are weddings and birthdays and type events that they're having next door, there's drinking and all going on in addition. And so I have, to have litter. And then, of course, when they have these events and there's not enough parking, they end up parking in my yard. So again, I just really asked y'all to please don't rezone this. And unfortunately, we just got the notice last week about this. And so my neighbor, she's a senior citizen, and she had wanted to come today but was unable to, death from the family. She asked if I would present a letter for her.
Please.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask?
Yes.
Can I ask you just a couple of questions, really quick? What type of noise have you heard?
Well, it's the music is one thing, but another thing, when you get a crowd like a stadium or a bar or anything where a lot of people's there and there's a lot of talking, how you just hear noise because it's like people's trying to overtalk. You get a lot of that because it's such a small area and it's in the middle of a subdivision, literally. So when they get over there going, you hear the music and the dancing and all that, but at points in times it's just a lot of loud noise. You can just like being in a stadium or something, just noise.
Okay. And then lastly, did you attend the open house that the Willises?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I absolutely did.
And you heard the concessions?
I heard the concessions, and, and the one thing that I have to say, and I appreciate Mr. Willis for inviting us, was that, he had noticed since then that they get louder than what they're supposed to with the music and all, because I had mentioned that before, because I can't hear my TV sometime. And anytime, though, when you have parties and you have drinking, you can give them the rules, but they're going to still do it. It's a party. The more people drink, the louder they get. So he has made some concessions that he would try to close them down earlier and this, that, and the other. But, if it was a regular business, at least you'd only have it during normal business hours. This way, I'm going to be dealing this with on Friday night, Saturday night, or Sundays, just whenever. So I can't even enjoy it, and just because of where my living room happens to be, to where they have a lot of these events, it's just no way that it's going to be quiet enough for me to really enjoy the comfort of my house.
Great, thank you. We'll take the letter, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker?
Next speaker is Frank Willis, to be followed by Bert Thornton.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Frank Willis. I live at 1609 Centerville Road. I appreciate the chance to come back and help work through this issue. At y'all's request, we have met with the neighbors. We had quite a few turn out for a meeting last Tuesday night. We offered to meet most of the objections with things that would calm all those things. We are going to reduce the number of people at the parties down to 125. All amplified music will be moved into the building and there will be no parking allowed along Goodwood Drive of guests. I think that we can work this out with the neighbors. Those items should really calm things down. And we're also going to limit the hours of operation to 9 o'clock at night instead of 10. Parties over at 9, everybody out by 10, all the, rental companies, that kind of thing. So I really think that we can work through this with the neighbors and make it work. We've got quite a few neighbors that are for us in the neighborhood that would approve it. We had several the other night that had signed the previous petition against us, but have actually flipped and are now in favor of it, based on these, things that we've done to calm their fears. So, I can answer any further questions that you have on it.
Commissioner Zuffer?
I'm just curious, so the concessions you made, who enforces those?
Well, it's through our contract at this point. We have a rental agreement that the people that rent the venue would have to abide by.
But this, just to be clear,
Yeah.
the city would not enforce any of that.
Well, you have a city noise ordinance that you can enforce, and we do enforce that. I have a sound meter, and we check, and we have been vigilant the last, since this has all come up. We've been very vigilant about keeping the noise down.
But the number of people...
The parking issue would go away. The overflow parking would go away because of the number of people we allow on site.
But we don't enforce the number of people you have on site. The city doesn't enforce that.
I don't suppose so.
And we don't enforce the parking because there are no parking signs there.
Not on private property. They would be parking on private property. We have a limit of 45 cars. There's only 40 cars, you can only fit so many there, and we won't be allowing anybody to park behind on Goodwood Drive.
But you can't do that. How can you enforce parking on a right-of-way?
I have an on-site attendant that parks all the cars.
Okay. I guess my point is, I just want everyone to be clear here, and we appreciate all the concessions that you've made, but none of those are enforced by us other than the sound ordinance. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I feel comfortable with you enforcing parking on a city street either. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that these are all really good concessions, but we can't enforce them other than the noise ordinance, which already exists.
We do have an off-duty officer at every party now, so that gives us some ability, I think, to enforce it. You have a uniformed deputy there. If he tells them not to park there, I feel like they will, not park.
Thank you very much. City Attorney, I'm wondering, is there anywhere in document where agreements or concessions could be codified and therefore used as leverage should they be broken?
Mayor, the only way I know to do this is if in fact this was converted to a PUD, there could be very specific requirements which we would approve, which the Planning Commission would approve, which would be part of the document that was approved, and then we could have code enforcement, and or necessarily the police department enforce what was specific documented requirements.
So it's your belief that your legal opinion that the only way to enforce items such as parking, noise outside of the...
I think, Mayor, otherwise it is no doubt some concessions, but is up to the parties themselves to enforce, to have some kind of contract or have some kind of enforcement, and notwithstanding, not questioning Mr. Willis' willingness to do these things. As a practical matter, the city has no way to enforce them.
Right. Got it. And what's the cost associated with a PUD? Do you have a sense of that, Mr. Willis?
We haven't really investigated it, too much. I've talked to Mr. Tedder about it, and it does seem like that might be an answer to our problems. I really don't know. Since we're built out, basically, there's really nothing further to I guess, engineer. So I think it's just a matter of doing some site planning, and you just plop the bubbles down over specific, specific use for this building, specific use for that building. This area is parking, this area is, designated as what might be future construction, which would be my mother's house, which at some point will need to be remodeled. It's 50 years old, and it's at that point now where it's going to have a pretty major reconstruction there. So, but other than that, with our historic preservation overlay, that is really going to protect the existing historic fabric that's there. And that's our real goal, is to protect that historic fabric. Because there's currently 6 parcels there. If we are not able to generate some kind of income to do the maintenance, then we will piece it off. And that's what's happened all over town. That's why we have run-down old houses and neighborhoods, because they don't have the ability to generate an income. And originally, those houses, most of them did have that,
Thank you, Ms.
that
Willis.
space.
Thank you. Commissioner Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Willis, bottom line, would you be willing to work with city planning and growth management staff to begin to pursue a PUD that codifies these issues that are of concern to the neighbors?
Yes, sir, I would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Next speaker is Bert Thornton.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Albert Thornton. I live at 1520 Goodwood Drive. I appreciate the changes that Mr. Willis has made at the Old Willis Dairy to help our neighborhood. The changes need to be part of the rezoning application. However, the fact remains that Benton Oaks is a residential subdivision that could not be more ill-suited for a commercial event venue. My neighbors and I bought the homes in the specific neighborhood for good reasons. Please consider that your vote tonight could alter the very character of our neighborhood and the property value of our homes. Thank you for your help.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Mark Tarmy. To be followed by Craig Huffman.
Curtis.
Commissioners, Mark Tarmy, 322 Beard Street. I'm one of the architects for the Old Willis Dairy property. Basically, Frank used my entire script, so I'm going to yield my time. It became apparent early this afternoon that perhaps this PUD is probably the way that we should pursue this, and so I don't think there's a whole lot of reason for me to stand up here and go through all the points for a comp plan amendment. I think that's the direction that we're going to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Craig Huffman, to be followed by Marley Lino or Lino. Lino?
Craig Huffman, 1127 Morningside Court, Tallahassee. I'm the other architect for the Willis property. I think this is the first time ever that Mark Tarmy spoke shorter than I have. Before it was a residential neighborhood, it was a dairy. Cities change. Cities are organic, they grow, but they're not static. If one was going to conceive of a venue in the city that ties to the history, the culture, the geography, the architecture of this place, Tallahassee, you could not conceive a better venue than the Willises have. It adds value to the neighborhood. It adds value to the city. So, the way I see it, you guys need to step back and take a broader view. You need to look at time over decades and centuries and to say, what's in the interest of this community over time? And the Willises are being very cooperative. They're going to work with the neighborhood. They're going to codify these items. I think there's a constructive dialogue I sense emerging here. So please be flexible and open-minded in supporting the Willises rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yes,
if I could.
Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said before there was a neighborhood, there was a dairy. Who developed the neighborhood?
I don't know, but the Willis family had the dairy.
The Willis family developed the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's just an important
Yeah.
point. I'm hoping that we come to a good result here, but the Willis family that owned the dairy developed the neighborhood that later didn't like the use that they had there. So I think that makes this unique.
It does. I'd like to just add as a reminder, the Willis Dairy has won 2 state preservation awards and 2 local preservation awards. I mean, this is a property that has state and national recognition. So it's a jewel. We need to treat it as such.
Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Marley Lino.
Good evening. I would like to say that I have to agree with the gentleman that just spoke. It is a treasure in town, but it's also right in the middle of our neighborhood, and our neighborhood was never built to be home to a business. We've lived there for 40 years. We were the very first house that Mr. Willis ever contracted to build. And we still don't have any kind of line down the middle of our road because it's too narrow. And I have to say, we're about 6 or 7 houses down from the dairy. We're between Centerville and the dairy. And at night, when there are parties, if our windows are open, we can hear it. I have to say also that it was wonderful to be able to finally be invited to the property after all these years, to be able to see what was there. And we appreciated the open house and the goodwill that was extended. However, there's no air conditioning or heating in the barn. So the windows are always going to need to be open, which now impacts the sound and the music. And property value and the value of something is a relative term. What's valuable to me may not be valuable to you. And so I don't know how we can actually speak about that, because you have 2 different groups with an idea of what the value is. I just have to say that I really hope that this doesn't end up ruining our neighborhood. Not so much even for the property values. We've been there a long time, and my husband and I will probably end up dying there. But it's about our neighborhood, and it's always just been a quiet, very small neighborhood that people take care of and take pride in. And not wishing the Willises any ill will, but I just don't think that this is an appropriate addition to the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, yes, Commissioner.
Can I ask you just a quick question? Sure. In the 40 years that you have lived there, have you filed a complaint or called in a complaint against the Willises for exorbitant noise or the parking or any of the other things that have been issues in the...
No, because I will admit that at the very beginning of all of this, it wasn't happening that often. And we trying to be a good neighbor and not make a big fuss about it. And to be honest with you, my husband and I never really knew what was behind all the fencing and the gates, because nobody's ever been invited in to see it. Sometimes a tree would be down on Centerville, and if you were coming from town, you had to make a U-turn in the middle of Centerville Road because you couldn't get through. A couple times it was right in front of the Willis's house, and they would put sawhorses up to keep the neighbors from cutting through to get home. So, you know, if you're never invited in and all of a sudden something is just thrown at you after all these years, I'm not sure what we were supposed to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Jennifer Humane. And Jennifer, if I mispronounced your name, please accept my apology.
Good evening, and you're not the first person to pronounce my name in a different way, but it's Jennifer Humane.
Say incorrectly.
It was really great, and I appreciate the effort. Most people just say Jennifer and stop there. I live at 2315 Bergonia Drive, and I am here to support the zoning change. I think that it's a valuable property, and that the historic overlay should be a very valuable tool to the neighborhood and the community to preserve the character of that particular part of Tallahassee. I feel like it's a wonderful asset that the entire community can benefit from, and people coming in from out of town as well will be able to appreciate some of the things that Tallahassee has to offer. So I hope that you will consider changing it so that it can be used for assembly purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Nancy Morgan, to be followed by Dave Lang.
Pardon me as I come from the far corner of the earth over there. I am Nancy Morgan. I live at 2320 Monaco Drive. And in my day job, I am one of the co-executive directors of Goodwood Museum and Gardens. And so I'm both here as an individual and as a person who has been in the field for a long time of preserving special places and using those special places for the benefit of community. I think it's an economic development tool. Historic preservation has always been an economic development tool, and I think that for our community, having special places like Goodwood, like Willis Dairy, like Cascades Park, are very important for us to be able to connect to our heritage and to build on the future as well. I know that there are difficulties when two types of use come up against one another, but I have seen Mr. Willis and I've seen Pepper and Frank in action. I know that they are excellent partners for the community. They're very community-minded, and I think that they are doing their very best to make this work. And in my personal opinion, I think those efforts would be good enough for me. I think this is something that I would love to see go forward, and if I were in the neighborhood, I honestly would feel the same way.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Dave Lang. You'll be followed by Lonnie Mann, who will be our final speaker.
Good evening to you.
Good evening.
I'm here to speak on behalf of Frank and Pepper Willis. I came tonight and they'd asked me to say a few words for them. Both Frank and Pepper are a member of our historical society, and they love their local history, and frankly, their venue is a very historical spot. We've had some of our historical society meetings there, and I know that both Frank and Pepper are hardworking, honorable folks. I think they developed it in good faith. I empathize with the neighbors there, and I'm hoping that things can be worked out so that they can maintain their venue there, and also, work with the neighbors to make that place a great spot. Frankly, it is a hidden treasure here in town. If you haven't been there, you really need to stop in because it's a beautiful venue. They've done just continually every day do things to improve that site, and it's a part of local history. As I said, it's a hidden treasure. So I know that I've heard that your city departments have come out in favor of this, and I'm hoping that y'all will work with both the Peppers, with the Willises and the neighbors, so that this can be continued as it is at the present time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last speaker
Lonnie
is
Mann.
Lonnie Mann.
Thank you for the hard work that you do. I appreciate it. I just like to say that I've been in Tallahassee 45 years. I've seen some really important historical sites go by the wayside to the wrecking ball. People like the Willises are people who try to make a project like this work. They take a risk, they extend themselves. I know they're not making a fabulous fortune off of operation of this, but they do need to have some way to help support the Willis Dairy. And so if you can, try to think of this as a business as well, and something that supports vendors and other people who make a living off of this type of operation. So I'd simply like to ask you to extend as much flexibility as you can to them, and be mindful of the type of economic constraints that somebody who undertakes this type of risk has to deal with. And finally, just, you know, I realize that the comprehensive plan is in no way binding, but policy 1.414, allow exceptions to zoning regulations, land development regulations, and building regulations when such exceptions promote the preservation of historic resources and are consistent with life safety issues. I know that, again, the Willises are bending over backwards to try to be good neighbors, and I hope you'll support what they're trying to do. It's good for all of us.
Thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Ziffer, before you make your motion, Commissioner, I just want to thank all of the neighbors who came out, all making very, very valid and important points. And frankly, we've seen much more contentious kinds of issues, and so are appreciative of the very neighborly way in which each of you made your points. Commissioner Ziffer.
Mr. Mayor, if I can suggest, and I think we've probably at that point, because it seems like there's already discussion going on out there regarding this. First of all, I don't think there's any question that the historical relevance of the property, the historical preservation of the property, for those of us that drive on that road system, clearly over the years have recognized the amount of work and the meticulous effort that's been made to create something that is truly special. So I want to thank the Willis family for that. But I will say, and I mentioned this whenever it was 6 months ago, for a short period of time I lived off of Goodwood, and that is a very, very small road. And it is not a very, it's not a road that's designed to carry a whole lot of traffic. So if I could suggest, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we initiate a PUD zoning district for the property, reschedule Transmittal to coincide with the PUD hopeful approval, which would be, and this is a short fuse here, this would be in our September meeting. So I think the dates I'd written down, well, I've lost the dates. I think it's September 13th. It would be introduced with approval on September 27th.
Second.
The only problem may potentially be, Commissioner, is that if we go the full PUD route, we have, and Cherie can give you a better idea, we've got to go to the Planning Commission. So, and we've got a month of August where neither the Planning Commission or this commission will be meeting. So, Cherie, you can tell
Those dates are the earliest we can do it. Those would work. Those would give us time to do all the required steps.
This is going to require a lot of legwork. This is going to require some really quick meetings between the neighbors and the Willis family to make sure that everything is covered. But I think this can be done because it's important for them to get in compliance as soon as possible, but it's also important to protect the neighborhood for any issues that might come up as a result of some of the things we talked about today.
So what you're suggesting in the motion is that we would continue the transmittal hearing. We would take Mr. Willis at his word that he will immediately start a PUD application and process, that we will do everything we can to move that forward in a timely manner, and reschedule it and put it back on the agenda at the September date that you've identified.
Yes, sir.
September 27th. Yes.
For final approval will be the 27th.
Correct.
Commissioners, there is a motion and a second. I also want to mention, you know, a lot of these historic preservation properties, we've seen them in downtown and throughout the community, have picked up other business uses in order to sort of make the ends meet. Truth is, with a property with this much acreage in city, if it were to be subdivided and developed into a residential neighborhood, I imagine quite a heaping could be made. I don't know, but I just guess that might be the case. And so I really appreciate the commissioner's motion to try to get codified some protection and enforcement for the neighborhood, while at the same time trying to make sure that, you know, a reasonable business can be run there that doesn't over intrude on anybody's quality of life in the community. So I look forward to those provisions coming back. Commissioner Miller?
Well, first of all, I wanted to ask Sri to please explain to everyone that was here exactly what a PUD process is and what it means to them, the public input piece, the piece on the part of Mr. Willis. I'm sure you've probably gone over that with
Sure,
him.
it stands for Planned Unit Development. It is, what it does is it allows the city to work with the property owner to tailor a zoning district specific for that piece of property. And it works well in cases like this where you want to include very specific things in relation to neighborhood compatibility. It's actually one of the precise reasons the PUD exists is for certain situations like this. And what that will do as far as the public input on that process, it's a public, it will require 2 public hearings in and of itself. It will go to the Planning Commission, which was the same body that this amendment went to earlier. There'll be a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, which is an appointed body of citizens. And then after that, there'll be a second public hearing in front of the City Commission as well. So there'll be 2 points of input, as well as the Development Review Committee, which is a staff level where you actually have a ability to comment at a very early stage in the process there as well.
If I can interject.
Yes.
For it to meet the timetable that we outlined, it would require some sit-downs pretty darn quick to make sure that all the issues are dealt with between the neighbors and the Willis family. And I'm confident, based upon what I heard today, I think that can be done.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Richardson.
Commissioner Miller, did you get?
All set. Thank you.
Okay. And I think, Commissioner Ziffer, that those issues have been addressed. The issue is codifying those so that they can be enforced. So I think that process ought to go fairly quickly. As you all know, I voted against this rezoning request when it initially came to the commission because I have been a strong neighborhoods advocate since I've been on this commission, and I heard from the neighborhood that this was something they didn't want. They complained about the parking and the noise, and I had never heard of the facility. I certainly had never been there before, and so addressing the issues of the neighborhood, voted against the rezoning, but I was glad that we were given the opportunity to revisit this because it gave me the opportunity to actually visit the property, which I did, and spent about an hour with the Willises and their family, touring the site and hearing them give me a history of the old Willis Dairy, and talked to one guy, and he said that, at one point that was the only place in Tallahassee where you could get milk. And so the family has been around a long time and contributed a lot to the community, and I saw firsthand what they had done to the property in terms of the historic preservation and what they have done in the community to support a number and a variety of not-for-profit organizations, probably sometimes at their own expense. And so based on what I saw and the commitment that I heard from the Willises to address the issues of the neighbors, which we all have heard tonight, they opened up their home to the neighborhood and invited their neighbors in to address these issues. I was convinced that this was a project that needed to go forward. And so that's why I decided to change my vote and support it. For those reasons and for the fact that it is a small business, it is a family-owned business, and we have said as a commission that we support the establishment and growth of small businesses in our community that are the backbone of the economy of this community, and not just the Willises, but all of those vendors that service the events that are held at the venue. And so I think that this is a good compromise to codify those things that concern the neighborhood. I think it adds value to the neighborhood, really, and the homes in the neighborhood. And so I think that this is a good compromise, and I think that this commission has shown a willingness to bring the opposing parties together in a number of instances like this now. And we've come to, I think, a reasonable conclusion. We've never satisfied 100% of the parties, but I think in most instances, if not all, especially here recently, we've come to a resolution that most of the parties could agree with and gave us a way forward. And I think this one is an example of that as well. And so I'm glad to see that we have come to this. Thank you for your motion, Commissioner Ziffer, and I support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Commissioners.
One more question.
Commissioner Miller.
Could you give us the status of the historic overlay?
Yes, that has been submitted. It's been approved by the Architectural Review Board, and they were just waiting to schedule it for the Planning Commission just to make certain we could coincide it with this process.
Okay. That runs with the land, even no matter what the future?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right.
Well, that's a good step.
Okay.
Great. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern was that the change in use happened after the neighborhood was developed, so the neighborhood had an expectation that was different than the change of use. And that's why I voted the way I've done. I appreciate the Willises. I've been very open with them and told them where I stood from the very beginning. I see that the votes are here for a compromise. I won't stand in the way of that. But I'm hopeful that what we get on the back end is something that's enforceable. If it is not, then I won't vote on it. I won't vote for it when it gets to that point.
I understand. Commissioners, I believe all voices have been heard. Is there I'm sorry, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Commissioners, we're now on item 7.01. We have heard all speakers unless there have been any new ones.
Correct.
We've heard all speakers on that item. So we're in line for a motion.
Second.
There's a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do need to read this title into the record.
Can you read it?
I can do so. An ordinance, this is ordinance number 17-0-18, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee adopting amendments to the 2030 Tallahassee-Leon County Comprehensive Plan, providing for severability and conflicts and providing an effective date.
Commissioner Ziffer.
I want to make sure we're talking about the right thing.
We are, it's item in Board Docs 8.01 on the agenda that was printed because there was a late modification done. So the agendas that were printed for the public, that's item 7.01. So this what are that is what you heard the speakers on earlier regarding standby.
So I just, if I could, I just want to, and similar to the last one, but I think we're on this one. I'm going to really impress upon the owner. I think it's important to try to curtail hours that are appropriate for that. I think it's important to provide as much distance as you possibly can between the property lines and your equipment. The speakers that I've heard tonight, clearly, I mean, this is it's where they live. And so I will just impress as best I can upon you that you need to do those things. Thank you.
I agree.
Any other comments, Commissioners? Seeing none, there is a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioners, we're now on to City of Tallahassee public hearings. I don't know how it appears.
It is 9.01 in your Board Docs. For the public, it's shown as item 8.01. Same with this and the following item. I'll need to read the ordinance number into the record. So I will do that. And then if we have public speakers, we can take them at that point. This is Ordinance 17-Z-13, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designating and including additional territory as an NR4 urban residential and residential preservation 2 on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflict and severability and providing an effective date. Are there any speakers on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
There are no speakers. There's a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. We're now in the first of two public hearings.
Yes, this is the last item for tonight on the home stretch, item 9.02 in board docs, item 8.02 for the audience. And that is the first of two public hearings on ordinance number 17-Z-14. Do I need to read this one as well, or do I do that at the end? Read it now. That is ordinance 17-Z-14, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designating and including additional territory as and in R4 urban residential on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflict and severability and providing an effective date. And then, as the mayor noted, this is item the first of two public hearings, with the second public hearing scheduled for June 28th, 2017 at 6 p.m. in this
Are there any
chamber.
speakers?
We have no speakers on this item.
We changed this so that, there we go. I have the correct.
Thank you. Is there any
version.
other business before this body? Sharif?
That concludes cycle 2017.
All right, thank you, and thank you to the
Wait.
under-celebrated and under-appreciated, sometimes planning staff who work with us and work with the community in the neighborhood to make sure that this community's values are first and foremost in our considerations. Commissioner Miller.
Well, following what the mayor said, this has been a remarkable effort, a remarkable cycle. I haven't seen anything like this probably in 10 years or so. So try not to put them all on the same one for just one big bad one every 10 years, just saying. But I want to commend all of you. You all have worked so incredibly hard to search for answers, to search for solutions, to move us from where the amendment might have started through the process to investigate numerous avenues of alternatives and coming out at the back end here today with good results. So I'm very proud of y'all. I really do appreciate your dedication. I know of some of the, Sheree and I had one of those nights, the 4 hours, and that was just one. I'm sure you had to go with everybody else too. So it just really took so much out of y'all, and I just really wanted to say publicly how much it means to us to have staff that are dedicated to trying to come up with the right answer for everybody.
And likewise, they have very dedicated staff working, and I'd like to thank you for that, and also personally thank staff for all of the hard work and many hours that they put into it.
Good.
Thank you very much. We stand in adjournment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.